All right, hello everyone. Who is excited for the first session of the day? Woo, yeah, all right. So to kind of help us warm things up today, since it's the first session, I want to start with just some fun DevTools questions. Folks tend to feel pretty strongly about these, so I'm very excited to see where we all lie here. Okay, first question. Preferred editor color mode. We're gonna have light mode versus dark mode. So let's see a show of hands for light mode. All right, here's some woos. How about dark mode? Okay, nice. Told you these would be fun, right? Okay, here's another one. Where do you put your sidebar in your editor, on the left or on the right? For reference, VS Code defaults it to the left, but you can move it to the right. Who has it on the left? All right, and who has it on the right? All right, and then one last one. It's a classic, tabs versus spaces. Tabs. Ooh, this one's a little more half and half, I think. Okay, spaces. All right, nice. So hopefully now we're all warmed up, and I'm so excited to show you today how you can use VS Code to develop anything from anywhere. And I really mean anywhere. Maybe you're traveling, like to a conference this week, like Build, but you'd still like to develop remotely against a powerful desktop machine that you have at home. Or maybe you have a super secure setup that you need to connect to for work. Or hey, hopefully it's getting to be summertime. We got a little glimpse of it last week in Seattle. Maybe you're gonna go on a trip somewhere and you'd like to just pop in and code right from the beach even. You can use VS Code to develop from any of these places. And you can move between all of them really seamlessly too. Throughout today's session, I'm also gonna sprinkle in some different tips and tricks and things that I find really helpful in my editor, and hopefully you'll find it helpful too. And if we get stuck at any point, don't worry, we're of course gonna have GitHub Copilot here with us too, and we'll use that a little bit as well. Okay, so to kick things off, I just want to start off at one of my favorite places, and I'm probably a little bit biased being on the VS Code team, but I want to start things off on the VS Code website. So here at code.visualstudio.com, we'll see that I am suggested of like, hey, I can download VS Code for Windows. Which totally makes sense because I'm on a Windows machine right now. But I may see down here, it's like, hey, I could also use it on the web or Insiders or other platforms. What does that mean? If I click on other platforms, I'll see I have all these other kinds of installers I can use on any kind of OS or system. And I could even get new features sooner. So maybe I want to use the Insiders build. Show of hands, who uses VS Code Insiders? Hey, yeah, I definitely recommend it if you want to get the latest features and fixes. We publish it basically every day. And then I even see I have this option to make some quick edits online. Has anyone used or heard of vscode.dev? Okay, a couple folks too, so we'll see even more about that later, so don't worry if you haven't heard about it. So the VS Code that we've been downloading from that page is a multi-process application. The UI you normally interact with in VS Code runs in the Electron renderer process, whereas extensions run in their own extension host process. Those extensions can then spawn additional worker processes to do their work. Did you know that VS Code actually has a built-in process explorer that you can check out? That can be our first quick demo of the day. So I'll pop into VS Code Insiders here. You can tell I'm in Insiders because it has this nice green logo, or it says it at the top. And if I run the command with Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P, I can say Open Process Explorer, and I'm gonna be able to see all the running processes that I have. And I can get some more information about them or kill them if it feels like they're misbehaving, maybe. So with this multi-process architecture, we have a couple of key benefits that it unlocks. Isolation and stability, really. One bad extension isn't going to tear down your entire editing experience or cause you to lose your work. It also lets the OS manage resources for you, which it's generally really good at. Another key feature that this model unlocks is portability. We can run processes pretty much anywhere we want, even on other remote machines. So I could have my extensions running in desktop, or I could have them running on another machine, or even in the browser. And with the UI running in Electron, I can also serve the front end in the browser too. Since our architecture has supported running anywhere, and we found our users becoming increasingly remote, we released the VS Code Remote Development extensions, which let you use the Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL, a container, or a remote machine as a full-featured development environment. You get access to any source code or dependencies that is on that remote directly from your local VS Code. The extensions also run commands directly on the remote environment, so things are going to look and feel really seamless and just like when you work locally. So I thought it'd be neat to frame today's demos in terms of real-world scenarios that probably you've encountered or you know someone who has. So we're going to get interactive with just some shows of hands. Who here has had to develop code that's located somewhere other than your local machine? Yeah, so this could be like a super secure VM for work, or it could be a machine in the office while you're traveling or while you're at home. You can see that this is a pretty common one, so we're going to kick things off today with our first scenario is I need to develop my app and it's somewhere else. For today's scenario, my code is in an Azure VM, and we're going to be able to connect that with the remote SSH extension in VS Code. So you can go ahead and check it out. So just initially, I'm going to start off by showing you what app I'm going to use. And since we're going to be going through a variety of different remote setups, I'm going to use the same app for all of them, so it doesn't feel like there's a bunch of things all changing at once. Same app, just different places we're going to be developing it. So the app I have is just a GitHub repo. You could actually check it out. It's a public GitHub repo. And so I can see it has a bunch of different files, folders, has some information. Seems to be a website actually about dev containers, which is pretty cool, because later we're also going to be using dev containers. If you also want to check out what this site actually looks like, and when we're running it, we're going to see this. It's available at containers.dev. But cool, OK, I know what code I want to work with, and I know that it's in an Azure VM. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code Insiders again. So first, I want to make sure that I have the remote SSH extension installed. I can open up the extensions view, and we'll just type in to make sure I have it. Cool, got it installed, because I see that it doesn't have an install button. Now, when I have any of the remote development extensions installed, it's going to add a couple of new UI elements to my VS Code. So for instance, I'm going to say I have this remote explorer, and that's going to provide me information about what remotes are currently available and running. I also have this remote indicator in the lower left. And if I click on that, I can get a subset of remote commands, kind of like nice entry points to get started with each of the remote extensions I have installed. So for instance, I could see, hey, I can connect to a host in a couple of different ways with the SSH extension. But this isn't the only set of commands that the extension provides. So if I want to see the full set, I'll just escape out of that, and I can just open up the command palette and type in remote SSH. You can see there's a bunch more as well. Now I see here right now, it looks like I just have the remote SSH extension installed. But since this is such a remote-focused talk, I'm probably going to want to use some other remote extensions too at some point. So this is really cool, because I actually have a specific VS Code profile set up for other remote development. So in the lower left here, we see that we have this option for profiles. And profiles in VS Code are basically going to give us a subset of extensions and settings and different UI elements, depending on what we need for that kind of project or what we prefer. So you can see I have a few different ones here. So I have one for Python development. I'm in my current one that I've maybe made ideal for SSH development. And then I also have one called remote. So I can check that out. And then now when I say open a remote window, I can see I have more remote extensions installed. So that's really cool. I didn't have to worry about installing or uninstalling based on what I'm working on. It automatically happened with the VS Code profile. Cool, so now that we've kind of seen what the remote extensions are looking like here, let's go ahead and connect with our SSH one. So I'll say connect current window to host. And I can see here a list of all of the different machines that I've connected to or configured here previously in the remote SSH extension. I can even go ahead and add a new one if I'd like. I know that for today's demo, I aptly named the VM build VM, so I don't remember which one to use, so we can go ahead and connect to it. Now we're going to see that VS Code reloads here, and at this point forward, we're basically working on that virtual machine. So for instance, this terminal that I have is now running actually on my remote environment. So if I type in uname, it says Linux, and that's really cool because I don't have Linux installed or working actually on this machine. I'm just using Windows. But since I'm connected to a remote Linux box, it's going to feel like I'm actually working in Linux now. Now when I go ahead and open folders or files, since I'm connected to my remote, everything that's going to pop up is what's on that remote machine. So for instance here, this is all the remote file system on that virtual machine. It's great because I didn't have to worry about uploading and downloading code between my local and remote environments. It's all just really accessible to me right here in my local VS Code. So I know that this is the repo name, and let's go ahead and open it up. It'll reload again, and it's going to feel pretty much like I had just cloned this locally or opened this from my local machine. Close that notification. And yeah, so now I can go ahead and explore the files, for instance. And so I'm going to get real syntax highlighting, completions, language support. I can preview my markdown. If I go ahead and make changes, like let's say I'm so excited about building, I want to add an exclamation mark there. I'm going to have my built-in source control, and I can commit directly back to this repo as well. Now, extensions are really where we see VS Code shine with extensibility of, hey, I can add so much more functionality to my editor depending on whatever I need. And so we see here we can totally install extensions in our remote environment. There's just a couple of different categories rather than just one. So I see I have locally installed extensions, and I also have ones that are specifically installed in this virtual machine. So you can kind of think about it as VS Code is really going to be able to pick up where it should put extensions, but you'll tend to see things maybe that don't need to run in the remote, like something like a theme or other kind of like grammar or snippet. Maybe that doesn't need to be in the remote environment, so that can stay local. But then something like, for instance, Copilot, if I want to use that, that'll probably be installed in the remote, or like language support, debuggers, or things like that. So speaking of extensions, and since Copilot's right here, let's just go ahead and try chatting with Copilot in our remote environment. So I actually have my Copilot chat over in the secondary sidebar. So this is another cool tip if you didn't know VS Code has a secondary sidebar. And you can put pretty much anything you want in it. And so I put my Copilot chat there. I could also move my Copilot chat back over here on the left, whatever I like. I personally like having it on the right here, because I think it's really nice to be able to look at my code that I'm working on, and to also be able to look at like my files and other things I have on the left or in the activity bar. So I think it's always good to greet Copilot. You know, it's helping us out. I think we should be polite. So I'll just say, good morning, Copilot. Thinking, so nice, good morning. How can I assist you today? So I think maybe I'd like to learn some more about the project that I have. So this is really cool, having chat integrated right in VS Code, because it's going to have context for the project or for the files that I'm currently working on. So I could say, what language is my project written in? Written in Ruby. OK, cool. So if I wanted to learn more, I could ask Copilot some additional questions, or I could even like use some of the pre-generated ones that it provides here. Now I see in this text box it says I can ask Copilot a question, or I could type / for additional topics. If I type /, I see I have some like pre-populated options that'll help give Copilot even more context when I give it a prompt. So for instance, I could ask something more specific to my VS Code environment. So hey, like I'm using remote, so I could say, what SSH machine am I connected to right now? And it'll think about it. It's, you know, warming up as well. It's the first session of the day for Copilot as well. And you know, sometimes that's OK. Sometimes with Copilot, it just needs to think a little bit, and that's all right, because you'll get a chance to think about your code too. Oh, there we go. OK. And it looks like I could just try that again to see if it's a little bit faster the next time. Machine am I connected to? Anyways, we can see that the output here tells me what SSH machine I'm connected to, and it gives me some information about how I can get some additional commands to run or things like that in my environment as well. It's OK. Maybe Copilot will warm up a little bit and think about this. There we go. OK, so maybe it thought about it, and for some of the next times we use it, it'll be even faster. So it's cool, too, because if it detects that there's a VS Code command, it'll say, hey, like you can click on this, and you can get some information in the command palette as well. OK, cool. So now that I've like kind of connected to my SSH box here, and I have an idea of this is a Ruby project, I'd like to go ahead and try running it. I want to run on this remote machine. But I know that it's Ruby, and I don't even know if I have Ruby installed on this VM. Close out of the Copilot view for now. And let's go ahead and check. So I'm going to say Ruby version. And so it looks like I don't have Ruby installed. So I could totally like think about maybe ask Copilot some more questions, do some internet searches, see if the README talks about how to install Ruby. But that might take some time. And what if there's some other dependencies I don't yet know about that I'll need for my project? Well, that's going to bring us really well into our second scenario. So for the second scenario, I'm going to start with another raise of hands. Who here has had to recently set up a new language or a new tool chain on their environment? Yeah, it could be maybe you're starting a new project, or it could be you want to check something out, learn something new. And with that, like, how do you approach it? What do you think about first? For me, I'm thinking, OK, I want to get things up and running as quickly as possible. So I'm probably going to do some internet research, and maybe I'm going to look at any documentation, bug my friends, bug my teammates. Maybe they're going to help me out. And after some number of hours, days, even longer, I'll have everything configured for my project or for a new team even that I'm joining. But what if some of the dependencies change in the future? Or what if I want to work on additional projects in other languages? It would have been really convenient if I could have just automatically gotten everything that I needed for this project, and honestly for other projects or languages that I'm looking to try out too. Well, we can actually do that, and we can do that with dev containers. Let's go ahead and check them out. So you may or may not have noticed that in the file system here, I have this .dev container folder. And this is what's telling me that, hey, I think this project may be set up to use dev containers. I'll also double check that I have the dev containers extension installed. Cool, looks like I do. And when you're using the dev containers extension, something to note is that you'll need to have Docker running on your system. So if I wanted to run this containerized environment on my local machine, I would need to have Docker installed locally. But since I'm connected to a VM, I think it'd be really cool if I could use a dev container in this environment. And I actually totally can. I can use the dev containers extension and a remote SSH together. And so as long as I have Docker installed on this SSH box, which I know I do, I checked before, I should be able to run it, no problem. Now just taking a quick look at how are we configuring this containerized environment. Let's take a look at this dev container JSON. Dev container JSON is just going to be a simple metadata format or a metadata file that's going to give VS Code some information about how to spin up and connect to a containerized environment. So for instance, we can give our container a friendly name. So I could have called this anything. I'm calling this Jekyll because this project is actually built with Jekyll, which is based on Ruby. And then I can see I can pull in any container image that I want. And so Jekyll image seems to make sense. And then I could even configure some other things here as well, like maybe behaviors for ports or other settings in VS Code. Now, it seems like this is a pretty straightforward file, so I could go ahead and create it by hand in future projects, but I actually don't have to. The dev containers extension is going to provide us great guidance to walk us through the process of creating new dev containers and adding them to our projects. So for instance, I'll click on our remote indicator again, and we'll see in the dev containers extension, we have this add dev container configuration files command. What does that do? Well, first it's going to detect, hey, if you already have a dev container JSON, it'll warn you about that. So that's this warning I'm getting here. But I want to see what the commands look like, so I'm going to say continue anyways. So now I'm going to be presented a variety of different options for some common languages or scenarios that I may want to develop for and have a containerized environment with. And so I know that since I was using Jekyll, I could specifically search for a Jekyll-based one. And then I'll get some other information about, hey, like if there's the option to choose different OS versions, I can do that too. I'll select the default one. And then I'm brought to this quick pick option to select features. So whenever you're setting up something new, you may find like, hey, I have just about everything, but I need like just one more language, or just one more CLI, or just like one more thing. And that's the idea behind dev container features. Sometimes you just need one more thing, or sometimes you may need a bunch more things on top of what your image is already providing. So for instance, if I thought about, I'm going to do some more Azure development here, so I'd like to install the Azure CLI. I can search here, and I'd be able to click the checkbox, and I could even click checkboxes for a bunch of these so that I could have a bunch of different features in my environment. But since it looks like I already have a pretty good dev container JSON in this project, I'm going to escape out of this and not generate a new one. So now that I'm ready, I want to go ahead and reopen in this container, so let's do it. I'm going to click again on the remote indicator and then reopen in container. Again, VS Code is going to reload, so it feels very similar to when we first connected that SSH machine. But now it's going to be, we're in a dev container on our SSH box, so kind of like a couple of layers of remote there. And we also have another visual indicator of this. So the remote indicator updated to say, hey, you're working on a dev container. Cool, that makes sense. That's what I would expect. And it's called Jekyll, which is what we saw in the dev container JSON in that name property. And then it's specifically at this SSH box called build VM. So it might look a little confusing at first, oh, there's all these words there, but once you break it down like that, it seems, yeah, that totally makes sense. That's what I expected. Cool, so I want to make sure, Copilot said that I need Ruby, and I saw if I'm using Jekyll and Ruby in that dev container, I want to make sure that it's actually installed. So let's go ahead and make sure. In my terminal here, I'll say Ruby version. Cool, I got it. And I didn't even have to like look up how to install Ruby or run any special commands in the terminal. I was able just to get it through that dev container setup. So I'm ready. I want to see this app running. So something else that's cool is you'll get access to a lot of the same commands and processes and running your app just like when you work locally when you're in remote. So for instance, I know I have some tasks set up for this project, so I can use my tasks in my dev container. So I think I have a task for serving my app, so let's go ahead and select that. Terminal's going to run, looks very similar to a local setup, and it even took care of port forwarding for me. So that's really nice. I didn't have to worry about like, oh, where is this located? What URL or port do I have to construct and all of that taken care of for me. Let's go ahead and open it in the browser. And there we go. This looks just like that site that we saw, containers.dev. And we're able to run it in a dev container, in an SSH box, without having to install really anything locally. This is awesome. All right, cool, and it works. We can click through it and everything. So we saw in this demo today, and I'll stop running that both when we were working in SSH, and now when we ran it in our dev container, this app seemed to be like pretty fast or pretty small. But what if I'm working on something that's going to be really compute intensive? This is going to bring us over to our third scenario. So I'll start with another raise of hands. Who here has ever thought, like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to set my computer on fire because I'm running something so compute intensive, and the fans are just going, and there's so much heat being generated. Like, this cannot be good for it. Yeah, I'm seeing some hands there and probably thinking about, that was not a very fun thing. I don't want to repeat that. So it's definitely a scenario that we can encounter, and maybe I'll encounter it later with this app if some of the dependencies change, or just when I'm working on other projects. I have a couple of options for how I could approach that. I could choose to remote SSH into a more powerful machine, or some sort of more specialized hardware or operating system. But I'm not always going to have either a desktop machine or a virtual machine running and set up. Like, maybe I just want an environment that's managed completely for me. We can actually do that with GitHub Codespaces. Codespaces provide cloud-powered development environments suitable for just about anything. And they're also backed by dev containers. So we can use that same exact dev container setup that we just used in the dev containers extension and in our SSH box in a Codespace too, so we don't have to learn a new format or create new files either. So let's check out a Codespace. I'm back here, VS Code Insiders, and let's go ahead and open up the Remote Explorer. So here we can see we have dropdowns for all of our different remotes. So right now it's telling me about the dev container that I have running and that I'm connected to. So now we can go ahead and check out our Codespaces that we may or may not have. Cool, so I can actually see that I have a couple of Codespaces configured. It looks like they're configured for this repo that we're working on. If I hover over them, I can get some more information about when they were created and how big or powerful they are. So for instance, it looks like this is a pretty powerful one. And then if I hover on this other one, this one's a little bit lighter weight. And so I can use any kind of machine size that I would like, since there's a variety offered by Codespaces. If I'd like to go ahead and create a new Codespace, I can also totally do that from the VS Code UI. And all this UI will be available if you have the Codespaces extension installed in VS Code. So I could say create new Codespace. And it's going to look for the repos that I have on my GitHub account. So it's going to automatically populate those for me. I could go ahead and click on a repo, so like my fork of the VS Code repo, and I'll be presented, hey, like which branch do you want to use? And so I only have the main branch forked, but if I had others, I could select from others too. If there's any other kind of settings in the initial dev container setup, those can be here as well. And then we're presented with actual machine size that we want. So we can choose from a variety of different options here, depending on the needs of our project. So I'll escape out of that, and because I already see that I have this Codespace, and very small, there's a little green icon meaning it's running, so let's go ahead and connect to it, and let's use our Codespace. All right, I'm going to click on that icon, and that's going to bring us into our Codespaces environment. Again, we didn't have to leave VS Code for any of this. Now, if you are already in the browser, you can actually create and use Codespaces from the browser as well. If you are used to that green code dropdown, which I can show you at the very top of this repo here, we can see here as well we'll have a tab for Codespaces, and we can create new ones on different branches or on different repos and access them from here too. So wherever you're working, you can use Codespaces there too. All right, so now that this is reloaded, this pretty much looks like the interface we were just in all of those other flows, so it's going to feel like a very consistent environment. Now, since we've been exploring this repo for a while, I think I'm ready to actually start committing a change to it and seeing what that process looks like and seeing what the GitHub integration looks like in VS Code. So let's go ahead and open up that dev container JSON again, one of my favorite files. So we've been talking about how this project is using Ruby and Jekyll, and we talked about how features let us install different kind of additional tool sets or things that we may need. So what if I've decided, hey, like I think there's some things in the Ruby feature that would be really helpful to have in my environment. Let's try adding it. So I'll put a comma there, and as I'm thinking about it, whoa, like before I could even type it out, Copilot provided a suggestion of, hey, are you thinking about Ruby? Maybe you want to put that in there. It seems like a good fit. So thank you for reading my mind, Copilot. I will just accept that. And once I save that, we can see a few things changed in the UI. So Codespaces lets us know, hey, there was a change in your dev container. Make sure you rebuild if you want those changes to take effect. This is a very friendly, very helpful reminder, because I've definitely found there's times where I'm making all these great changes in my dev container, and I'm like, why am I not seeing them? Why isn't it working? And then I realized I forgot to rebuild. So always helpful to get that little bit of guidance from the editor there. And then we'll see that it's also suggested in the source control view, or the SCM view of, hey, you made this change. Do you want to commit it? Do you want to push it? And now when I'm making changes, I don't really want to just commit to the main branch. That feels like it's not very helpful to my team or to the project. But I can see in the branch picker here, I'm already not on the main branch, so that's great. And if I wanted to switch branches, I could just click on this and work through any of the branches that are part of my Git repository already. Or I could create a new one if I'd like. So since I'm not on the main branch, sounds like we're good to go to try committing this. So let's say add new feature, and we can go ahead and stage that and commit it right from VS Code. I want to go ahead and sync this with my remote, so we'll go ahead and push that. So now that this change has started and I'm thinking about maybe I'm going to make other changes to this repo or to the dev container, I'd like to maybe start a PR, maybe just start a draft PR so I can start getting some feedback from my teammates or from the community on what they think. So there's a really cool extension in VS Code called the GitHub Pull Requests and Issues extension. Once you have it installed, like the name would suggest, you're going to get a look at the PRs and the issues related to this repo. So I can see any that I created or that other folks created as well, and I can open them and review them and things like that. So I'd like to create a new PR with this change that I started, and so I can hit this plus icon here, and it's going to kick off that process right from VS Code. So if you really feel like you're in the zone coding, you're in your editor, you want to do something with GitHub, you want to open a PR, but you don't want to leave your editor, you can totally stay completely within here. So this UI looks like just what I would expect on github.com or if I was creating a PR somewhere else. I can choose where I want to merge my changes from and where I want to merge them into. Looks good because this is the branch that I've been working on. And I know for the app that I was working on, GH pages, standing for GitHub pages, is the main branch. So looks good to start a PR there. And now I can start a title. So I could say my awesome feature PR. And we can add a description. So should we add more Ruby? And I can even choose auto merge behavior. So this is just like what I would see on the github.com UI. And if I don't want auto merge, no worries at all. I can uncheck that. And I said I wanted to create this as a draft because I don't know if I'm totally convinced yet. I haven't tested this out. So let's just create it as a draft to be safe. Cool. So I'll go ahead and create that. And we'll see we get this awesome PR interface right in our editor. We're going to get a link to our pull request, so we can open it up on GitHub, and we can even interact with it in other ways that we may be used to. So we could add reviewers and labels and assignees, and take a look at the diff view and all those kinds of things. So now that my PR is ready, I'd love to start sharing it with folks and getting some feedback. So maybe they're going to see it and be like, we don't want that feature, or, oh, this is a great idea, let's add 10 more, 100 more. So this brings us over to our fourth scenario. We can do another raise of hands. Who here has recently reviewed code from a teammate or from a friend? Yeah, it feels pretty integral to when we're working with others or we're working on any kind of project. So when you were given a piece of code to review, how did you approach it, or how do you typically approach it? You might think about, okay, should I just look at this on github.com? I'd like to look at it in VS Code and have some more power there, but if I'm cloning it, do I already have it cloned? Do I need to switch branches? Do I need to stash my changes? All those kinds of things. It would be nice if I could just be put into an environment that's still a VS Code, and that's dedicated just to this PR, or just to this piece of code. I could totally spin up a GitHub code space for the PR, but if it's something really lightweight, like what if I'm just changing some markdown, or I just want really quick eyes on something, maybe I don't want to spin up a whole code space because I actually don't even need any compute. This is a perfect task for VS Code for the web, or vscode.dev. So that's what we had seen on the download page at the beginning, that we could use vscode.dev for some quick edits and some quick reviews. So let's go see what it looks like. So back in VS Code here, we can see that we have a link to our PR like I mentioned. Let's click on it. This is also a good way to make sure that the PR really was created. Awesome. So it's really on my repo, really on that PR tab, and it has the description that I added. It also tells me it was built with GitHub code spaces. That's kind of a cool notice as well. So now to actually review it in VS Code for the web, what I can do is just add vscode.dev to the front of this URL. As it loads up here, it's going to use the power of that same pull request extension to pop us into a diff view. So that way we're going to get a view of, hey, what changed, and we can even interact with it as well. So for instance, I could click on the plus, and I could start a discussion. I could add a comment, make a suggestion, start a whole review here. I could tag people, that kind of thing. So this is a great way, again, to really quickly review code, interact with your team, interact with projects, and you're still using VS Code, just in a different way, completely in the browser. Now to take a quick look at the rest of the view of vscode.dev, we'll see as we open up the Explorer here, for instance, we still see all those same files. We can still edit and make changes and commit them back to our repo. And we didn't have to install VS Code if maybe we don't have VS Code installed on this system or we can't install VS Code on this system. We'll also see, for instance, that we can look at extensions and we can install extensions. Something that's worth noting is that since this is a lightweight version of VS Code running entirely in your browser, it works a little bit differently since there's no backing compute. So certain extensions will work out of the box, no problem. So for instance, themes are usually a great example of this. So Fairy Floss is one of my favorite themes. So I could install that, no worries, and nice, now I have an even more customized VS Code environment. Maybe this feels kind of between light and dark mode for our first question there. I don't know, pretty dark mode, but there's some light colors here. And then for other kinds of extensions that are maybe a little bit more involved, like maybe a language extension, those may not be available and will just require a little bit of extra work to enable in the browser. So if you're an extension author or you know someone who is, we actually have a web extension authoring guide that you can check out on our docs. So that's going to kind of talk about the architecture and what goes into extensions and how you can make sure that your extension is going to work anywhere that people are working on VS Code. Cool. So I remember also, I see this one other extension here. I see this GitHub Issues notebooks. So you may or may not be aware that there is notebooks functionality in VS Code Core, and you can run different kinds of notebooks. So as I've been working on this project, this website, I may find at some point, hey, like the pull request extension is awesome for getting a view at this specific repo, but I'd like to go ahead and get a look at the issues or other kinds of things across other repos in this space as well. So it sounds like a good opportunity to query data with a notebook. Go back to my Explorer, and I have this issues notebook that goes over all of the issues across different repos within the dev container spec. It's also just warming up. I haven't opened it yet today. Maybe we'll just give it a refresh and see what it thinks. But because we have that GitHub Issues notebook extension installed, we're going to be able to interact with our notebook directly in our editor. Cool, there we go, just a little refresh. So now I can run it, and it'll be able to, for instance, query things of, hey, like I want this repo queried and I want this milestone. And I'm going to get actual GitHub issues as output and be able to click through them and learn more about the projects that I'm working on. So this was a really cool way that, hey, like I was able to use VS Code, something completely different than my local desktop. Now at some point you may think, hey, like I'd actually like to have the power to use a terminal and run my code and have more extensions. If you open up the terminal in VS Code for the web, you're going to see, hey, like you can't have a terminal here since there's no compute, but you can totally continue working in another VS Code environment. So you'll have options to continue directly working in a code space, which is great, or to continue working in a new local clone, whichever you prefer. And we can also see we have this option to turn on cloud changes. And so cloud changes are going to ensure that the work you're doing that's still in progress is going to come with you even as you transition between environments. So if you're working on like a GitHub or a Git-based repo, if you make commits and commit those are definitely going to be available wherever you're working on this project. But there may be changes that I have in progress that I haven't yet committed. And so by turning on cloud changes, I can make sure that those come with me whenever I'm transitioning to new environments as well. Okay, so we've talked about transitioning environments, all of this stuff with remote. Let's head over to our final scenario. Okay, so this is going to be our final raise of hands. Who here gets excited for like summer, warmer weather, sunshine, anything like that? Yeah, okay. I saw people like thinking about it. Like, is that really what she's asking? It doesn't feel coding related. I promise, it'll be connected. So like I had mentioned at the beginning, it feels like maybe we're going to get into summer. Maybe I'm going to go on some more trips to somewhere cool or somewhere warm. Like maybe I'm going to go to the beach. And of course, I'm always excited about VS Code, if you couldn't tell. And I'm going to be so excited about what showed at Build and what all my awesome teammates and coworkers are working on. I'd like to code right from the beach. And maybe I'm not going to bring my whole computer with me, because I don't know how it's going to get along with the sun and the sand and all of that. So maybe I'm just going to bring my tablet, and I'd like to code directly from my tablet. The awesome things that we've seen so far pretty much let you use VS Code anywhere, but it still felt like there were a couple of gaps we could even better support. So for instance, in that scenario I was just describing, where, hey, I'd like to go ahead and work on the beach. If I'm working on a tablet, that probably isn't going to have SSH access, so I can't remote SSH into another machine. I could totally spin up a GitHub code space, but what if the code that I'm looking to work on remotely isn't on GitHub? Maybe it's on my local machine, or it's just stored somewhere else. This brought us to the idea of tunneling, where you can securely connect to another machine without having to configure SSH at all, so it's really convenient. You may not think about it, but VS Code actually has a built-in code CLI. So when you install VS Code Desktop, or if you install stable or insiders, you're gonna get code, or code insiders that you could run in a terminal. Now this command line is great for interacting with and launching desktop editor instances, but we found that there was still a gap with it. We have all these awesome remote options, but they weren't connected to really this CLI, or this core way that you can really launch and connect to editors. So last year, we released a new code CLI that includes tunneling functionality within it. We also updated it where this new CLI will come with VS Code Desktop if you still install that, but it can also be installed as a standalone component. So if you remember at the beginning on the VS Code website, one of those installer options was the CLI, and that's what I'm describing here. This is a really great option if maybe you're working on a machine where you can't install the full desktop VS Code, but you'd still like to work with tunneling and connect to it and use it with VS Code in some way. So let's go ahead and see what tunneling looks like. I'll close things out here just to make it a little bit simpler, and I'm just gonna go ahead and open up a terminal. And so I actually have the standalone CLI installed just to show you can use it either way, but you can totally also just use tunneling commands with VS Code Desktop when you have that installed. So whenever I install something new, especially command line, I like to kind of see what the options are, so let's run it with help. Cool, so I can see I have all these different options and subcommands with tunneling, depending on what kind of scenario I want. Something that's really cool is I see this option called no sleep. And so I think that if you've done any kind of remote development or connecting to another machine, you may find at times like, okay, cool, like I went home or I went on this trip and I know I set up my desktop machine, but it shut down or it went to sleep or it restarted and something like that, and now I can't connect to it. So you could run with a command like no sleep to ensure, hey, like the machine that you're starting the tunnel from should stay awake, so you should be able to connect to it no matter where you are. All right, so let's go ahead and see a tunnel in action. I'll go ahead and run just the tunnel command. And we're gonna see that we're provided a link. And so we could totally go ahead and just open up this VS Code dev link now on any of our machines. And we'll see as well that I'm using the stable version of the CLI, so it provided a vscode.dev link. But if I was using the insiders version of the CLI, it would provide an insiders.vscode.dev link. So just like how in desktop we have insiders and stable, we have the same in the web as well. All right, so I'd like to go ahead and try actually connecting in another machine. So I'm gonna pop over to this other machine I have here. So here I am in insiders.vscode.dev. I'm now in dark mode for the folks who voted for that at the beginning. You get a couple of minutes in dark mode. And you can see I have in the Explorer and I have on the Start menu, I have these open tunnel options. I could click on either of them. And when I click on it here, it'll detect any that I've connected to previously or that are tied to my GitHub or my Microsoft account, whatever I logged in with. So I can see it looks like this is online, which makes sense because I did just launch a tunnel on my machine. Let's go ahead and connect to it. We'll see the URL updates, so it tells me where I'm working. And this is also something cool about vscode.dev. As we saw when we were in a GitHub repo, it provided us a /GitHub URL. And here it provides a /tunnel and then information about that tunneling machine. So you can really bookmark these URLs. That way, if you always want to connect to a certain repo or a certain machine, you can do that. All right, so now we are connected to our remote environment. So for instance, I could go ahead and open files on this remote, just like we had done when we were connected to our remote SSH environment. Let's go ahead and open up that same repo that we've been working on. It'll again reload here, and then we're gonna see the actual files that are on this other machine. So I didn't have to worry about cloning or working on things on my tablet or my other computer I'm connecting with. I just had to worry about connecting with that tunnel. Now we saw that we had opened up a terminal in vscode.dev. It allowed us to continue working on, but since there was no compute, we couldn't actually use that terminal. But in here, since we are connected to a compute environment, we are connected to some sort of remote machine, we will have a functional terminal. So this is a really cool way if you want to still work in the web, you can bring even more power to it by connecting to a tunnel. So if I type in hostname, that's the actual hostname of the remote machine that I'm connected to. And if at any point you decide, hey, like, I don't think I want to stay in the web, or I really feel the most comfortable in desktop, you can totally do that too. So you can either start in VS Code Desktop and connect to a tunnel, just like we had done, or if you've started in web, you can click on the remote indicator, and then you can go ahead and continue working in VS Code Desktop as well. So no matter where you prefer, you can use VS Code in all these spots. All right. right, and I think that brings us to our conclusion. So I want to thank you all so much. I really appreciate you coming out on the last day of build here, and I really hope you enjoyed our remote journey as much as I did. I've included some different resources here, so I have a few different docs and GitHub repos. We have additional information, or you can connect with our team, and there's even more resources that we curated in that QR code in the upper left. I'm so excited to present and get your feedback here today, and as always, happy coding.